There's a meme that makes its way around the internet every couple of years, and the joke is that you can summarize all of Paul's letters with two simple statements. One, we are heirs through unfathomable grace to unimaginable glory. And two, I am, as a personal favor, begging you sick little freaks to just be normal for like 5 minutes. Well, this discourse in chapter 6 is happening in response to a very real situation happening in Corinth, one that Paul lays out in chapter 5. Shall we? This is verse 1. It is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that even the pagans do not tolerate. A man is sleeping with his father's wife, and you are proud of it. Shouldn't you rather have gone into mourning and have put out of your fellowship the man who has been doing this? Now, a man is sleeping with his father's wife. Isn't that his mom? Well, thankfully, at least, no. Paul has worded this in a way to point away from that. He's actually referencing a specific passage from Leviticus 18 that talks about who you can and who you can't have sex with. And there it says, A, don't sleep with your mom, and B, don't sleep with your dad's wife. Now, the reason it delineates both of those commands is because this was a polygamous culture at the time, and men did have more than one wife. In fact, often they kept concubines, who were women that they could afford to support financially and in turn have sex with, but they didn't get even the minimal status afforded to a wife in the ancient world. And just in case I need to make this clear for anyone, we do not get our sexual ethics today from Leviticus, where Paul is citing from. And for the record, neither does Paul. Because while it's possible, it's very unlikely that this situation here in Corinth was actually related to what was being described in Leviticus. For the most part, by the time of the New Testament, concubinage, polygamous marriages, they were long out of favor in Judaism, so it's very unlikely that's what's happening here. Scholars today are almost entirely in agreement that what's being described in Corinth is a man sleeping with his stepmother, which is still super weird, but not the same thing as the polygamous relationships described in Leviticus. However, to make it even more complicated, we have to ask another question. Is the father still alive while all of this is happening? And we don't know for sure, but if this woman is not the man's mom, and she's no longer married because the father has died, well, then it's awkward. But it's also hard to see Paul getting this upset about that strange scenario. Which means it is very likely that the father is still alive and that the son is doing this, at least in part, specifically to humiliate his dad. Wild, right? Like, honestly, can I just say how glad I am that I'm not a pastor in first century Rome? This stuff is definitely above my pay grade here. But it's this specific situation, along with lawsuits among different church members, that provide the context for that vice list that Paul offers in the middle of chapter 6. Here he says, do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither those who visit prostitutes, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. So understand, Paul does not just randomly bring up homosexuality here. He's talking very specifically about forms of sexuality that he considers predatory. In fact, that translation, men who have sex with men, far too oversimplified. The specific words that he uses here are arsenokoitai and malakoi. And the reason that he uses two different words is because they describe what we call the active and the passive role in sex. And in ancient Rome, it was generally fine for men to take the active role, with men or women, by the way. But it was seen as shameful and humiliating for a grown man to be in the passive role because it made them feminine or soft, which is literally what malakoi meant. For Paul, sex should be mutual, not predatory. That's why sex should not be the result of an attempt to humiliate your dad. That's why sex shouldn't be the result of an economic imbalance. That's why sex shouldn't be an expression of one man trying to dominate another. Now, what would Paul think about modern, mutual, monogamous same-sex relationships? The truth is, we just don't know. But that is absolutely not what he's talking about here in 1 Corinthians. And you need to know that our queer siblings are unequivocally a gift to us today in the church. This entire section is about weaponized sexuality.